I'm currently away from home, but I took some comics with me. Amongst them these three thorgal albums. Thorgal is a big thing in Europe. In some countries maybe even as big as Asterix or Spirou, and definitely at least as famous as, for example, Don Lawrence's store. But until quite recently I considered thorgal not to be in my bubble of interest. You know how the human mind works. It was apparently fantasy, a genre I'm usually not so keen about. Some guys I didn't want to have anything in common with, they praised thorgal whenever they had the opportunity, back in the day when I actually hung around in comic shops on a more regular basis. In short, there were enough reasons for me not to be interested in thorgal. How stupid I was. After some praise from the right people, I don't remember who it actually was, but thank you big time, I tried the comic series Hans or Hans by the same creative team. Hans is at first glance a sci-fi comic, so it was more up my alley, and even the story turned out to be pretty fantasy-ish. I was blown away by the drawings and coloring of that Polish artist Grzegorz Rosiński. Anyhow, I enjoyed Hans or Hans a lot, and of course it will be panellogized sometimes. But now I only have these three albums to praise Rosiński and the writer Jean van Hamme, of course. Yes, that's the same prolific guy who wrote 13 and some dozens classic European adventure comics. I'm showing you pages from the albums number 17 to 19. I only can guess the proper English titles by the German translation. Album 17 is The Guardian of Keys. Album 18, The Sun Sword, or maybe The Sword Out of Light. And number 19 is The Invisible Fortress. There's not a particular reason why I show you these albums, but the simple fact that these are the albums where I'm currently at in my reading thorgal marathon. Thorgal is actually not only fantasy, but a mashup of fantasy, bit sci-fi and northern mythology. And the latter has little to do with the Americanized superheroic world of the Marvel Thor, but reminds me a lot more of the familiar legends and fairy tales around Odin, the elves, trolls, dwarves and the like. Jean van Hamme's thorgal stories have a very authentic vibe. I mean, authentic as fairy tales can be. And like a character in thorgal says, fairy tales are just a different perspective on reality. But to be honest, what pulled me into the thorgal world was much rather the Viking saga aspect of it. We live here in northern Germany. That's one of these parts of Germany where the ancient Romans never were. And even for the most part of the Middle Age there wasn't much going on despite wild hordes of hunters and fishing folks. So Vikings and their settlements are as much history in terms of local historic sites as you can get. There are museums devoted to Viking history, and of course we dragged our children through them as well. Anyhow, I digress, but as I realized that thorgal is at its core a pimped up Viking saga drawn by that Rosiński guy who did that amazing Hans story, since then I was all in. There's a lot of stuff, you know, that I could live without. For an example, thorgal's origin from some future folks who stranded on Earth and left him to the Vikings. And they left some technical devices and weapons out of the future, which the Scandinavian natives of course considered to be magic stuff. That's actually a neat idea, but the sci-fi tech stuff blends in more often than not with real magic stuff, parallel worlds and all the aforementioned fairy tale tropes with sorcerers, fortune-telling witches, and good old-fashioned gods. The gods are, at least up to this part of the saga, nothing more than side characters. But anyhow, the main character, Thorgal, is quite a family guy. Wife, 2 kids, with some special esoteric abilities, yeah, one of the premises I'm not so fond of either. And there are good and bad Viking dudes and dudettes, especially one Chris de Valnor, who is maybe the most interesting character of them all. She's a sexy and mean killing machine, greedy and ruthless, but strong and able to save your life unless she betrays you again. And she's in love with Thorgal, but like I said, he's a true blue family guy. It's a good thing that not all of it is thrown at us in each and every episode. There's a constant change of more realistic adventures and more fantasy out there tales. For an European comic series, it feels pretty decompressed though. There's enough going on, mind you, but not more than you are willing to take. Jean van Hamme's writing is easy to follow and in my mind suitable for kids from 12 years plus as well. Granted, you live in one part of the world where parents usually don't go gaga booby alarm about some nudity. And of course, it's great escapistic fun for all of us old folks who are determined to stay 12 years forever. Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.